class, welcome back to Introduction to Ethics. I hope you're all doing well today. In today's teaching session, we'll be looking at the 7 steps on making ethical decisions. Stay tuned for the PowerPoint.
Okay, so we're going to look at the model now for making moral decisions. It's 7 steps to make a moral decision. And in most moral decisions that we have to make, we will have time to be able to gather facts and look at the pros and the cons and really reason things out. Most ethical or moral decisions are not needed for like immediate, imminent decision. But the example that we will use, it may look like that with an imminent decision. But most moral decisions, we're able to sit down and gather the facts and look at the facts. So step 1, gather the facts. The 2 primary questions that need to be asked in order to make an intelligent ethical decision are, number 1, what do we know about the situation or that's taking place that a moral decision needs to be made? And number 2, what do we need to know? And as I said, usually you have time to gather more facts. Okay, so step 1, gather the facts. Step 2, determine the ethical issues involved that cause the dilemma. Ethical dilemmas are produced when, in any given situation, one has to choose between 2 or more competing moral interests. So this is kind of self-explanatory. There's an ethical issue because 2, in this case 2 or more, moral interests that are competing with one another are kind of like butting heads. And which one do you choose? When thinking about the decision at hand, it is valuable to place it in the X versus Y format in order to reflect the competing interests. So in your mind, if you just want to think about X versus Y, or you know the facts that are underneath of X and the facts that are underneath of Y, and how they are opposite of one another and how they play against one another. So just to get that in your mind, it's helpful to envision kind of like an X versus Y format. Step 3, determine what virtues or principles have a bearing on the case. Okay, so now we're getting a little deeper than just the facts of the situation. Now we look at the virtues and principles that are going to be in play. List the virtues and moral principles that are germane to the issue at hand. The virtue and principles will come from a variety of sources. It can come from the facts, so you can get some of those virtues from the facts, like maybe what type of a person is involved, or their character traits, or their negative principles, or whatever. It can come from a variety of sources. The purpose of this step is to help you think through what virtues and principles you think should be satisfied by your decision. So when you make your decision, okay, good, this Christian virtue is satisfied, or this biblical principle was satisfied after you've made your decision. So this is kind of the step that you start bringing out those Christian virtues, those biblical principles. You're starting to think through these things. And then you list, step 4, you list the alternative courses of action to resolve the dilemma. So if I decide to do this, if I decide to do that, okay, so you're going to have alternatives to choose from to resolve the dilemma. Some alternatives will be immediately ruled out due to the fact that they are immoral. So if you objectively list a bunch of different alternatives, and number 1 on the list, it turns out, well, I can't choose that one because that would be just immoral to do it. Obviously, you're going to get rid of that one. But you want to, the point for this step is you want to list the different kinds of actions that can be taken to solve the dilemma. Okay, step 5, eliminate the alternatives. So now that you have a list of alternatives in solving the dilemma, well, you can't choose all of them. Some of them may be immoral, and you just have to toss it right away. Some of them might be causing further issue. You're reasoning things out and you're thinking of the principles and the virtues. Some of them may come to a point, it's like, no, that's just not the way that I want to go. And so you start eliminating the alternatives. This is done based on the moral principles relevant to the case. At this point, it may be the case that a clear decision can be made due to the fact that all alternatives but one have been ruled out. And that's kind of where you want to get to. You see it highlighted in the yellow on the screen, all alternatives but one. You want to get down to that one that satisfies you in making this moral decision, but it must also, this is very important, it satisfies you as a Christian because it upholds Christian virtues and it upholds the biblical principles. So that's the basis on making a decision with Christian ethics. So you want to get it down to that one decision. weighing of values and virtues may be required. So if you did come down to, let's say, two decisions and they're close to one another, you need to get down to one, but you have two you're kind of thinking about, you may have to weigh the values and virtues of which one would be better to help satisfy that ethical dilemma decision that you have to make. Step number 6. Now, this is a special step. Step number 6 is required when a resolution to the dilemma is not produced at step 5. So I'm going to go back for a second. So this is step 5. You eliminate the alternatives, but then you get down to all alternatives right here in the middle, all alternatives but one. Well, what happens if you can't bring it down to that? Bring it down to that one when the resolution just is not there. If virtues and values do not make the decision clear, then one needs to consider the consequences. It basically comes down to what is the consequence of the decision that's going to be made. The option most beneficial and causing the least amount of harm needs to be given serious consideration. Again, this is going to be probably pretty rare. You're going to be able to resolve your dilemma with the Christian virtues and with the biblical principles, and you'll be able to get down to what you should do. But once in a while, there may be an ethical dilemma that it comes down to, you know what, it's not clear. I just don't know what to choose. Well, then you have to think about what are the consequences of choice A, and then what are the consequences of choice B. And basically, it's going to come down to weighing these consequences. And again, on the bottom there, again, directly from the book, the option most beneficial and causing the least amount of harm, it does need to give serious consideration because in the end, as it says for step 7, the decision is made and acted upon. Okay, so you can't just be in limbo here and with this ethical dilemma and just kind of like, well, I'm just going to ignore it, or I'm just going to hope it goes away, or whatever. When it comes down to it, a decision has to be made and acted upon. In all likelihood, the decision will still be a difficult one despite using this model. This is a model. It's just to help us make ethical decisions biblically, but especially if you can't come to a good, clear decision on choice A or choice B, if they're still both kind of there, a decision still has to be made. It just can't be left in limbo. The final decision will probably involve some negative consequences. So if it's between choice A and choice B and you're just not sure and you weigh the consequences, both of them have consequences. You just got to be aware that there will be some negative consequences. And again, this is going to be probably pretty rare when you sit down and think about ethical dilemmas. That you would be able to reason it out biblically and reason it out based on Christian virtues and be able to come to an ethical decision. Okay, so that is it for making ethical decision.
All right, class, that's it for today. Next time, we'll be looking at part 2 of making ethical decisions. See you then.